Welcome into Turnkey on Queen City News Plus, your go-to show for everything real estate in the Carolinas. We talk about the latest market trends, do's and don'ts of the industry, and provide expert advice on navigating this dynamic landscape that we call home. You may be thinking, well, I would love to have a home someday, but I can't afford it. That's the topic that we're discussing today. And to help us do that is Joan Goode. She is the president of the Canopy Realtor Association and an active agent as well. You kind of wear two hats. I don't know how you manage your time, but you do it quite well.
Well, you're very kind, and thank you for having me back. My goal, Morgan, is to be the Alec Baldwin of your show. He's hosted Saturday Night Live more than anyone else. So that's my goal.
What is it when they reach a certain number? It's like there's a club for
There's
SNL,
a club,
right?
and yes, and I should know that, but I don't.
Okay.
Because right at his heels is Steve Martin.
Yep, exactly. All right. So maybe it's like the sixth timer. So you're well on your way to that. Today we're talking about affordability. And it's something that's on a lot of people's minds out there is housing isn't getting any less expensive.
Right.
There was actually a recent study released by Bell College of Business saying that affordable housing is critically scarce. Less than 2% are under $150,000 and about 18% are sold for under $300,000. So this, I think, is, Joan, I mean, it's what is on people's minds who are like, I want the American dream. I want to own a house someday. But then they see articles like this, and this was just released in November of last year, so fairly recently, and they get discouraged. What would be your message of hope to them?
So I am optimistic, although you are right. The average price of a home in the greater Charlotte area right now, the median number is $420,000.
Mm-hmm.
So individuals looking to purchase that home have to have a household income of $100,000. And that sounds so unattainable for so many. However, there's a multitude of options. We have condominiums, we have townhomes, builders are offering incentives. I think the outer lying areas, you'll see more building. Thank you for putting that up. Townhome building right now, attached homes, which that is really where I think first-time home buyers and actually our service workers, this is where nurses and police officers, we think of it as just first-time home buyers, but truthfully, it's the people that are making our city work each and every day.
Yeah. And we've noticed that there's been a huge effort to increase supply.
Yes.
And before the show started, you said, I hate to reference 2020 because it was like 6 years ago, but it's close enough in our memory banks that we always go back to 2020. Oh, remember when the market was crazy and there was like what was the inventory then? Half a month?
Oh my goodness. We were down to 1 day. So we had no standing inventory.
No inventory.
No inventory.
Yeah.
You put the sign in the yard, let the auction begin, no matter what. That was crazy. Unfortunately, the mindset of sellers is still that mindset of 2021. And buyers think as soon as the market starts to change, oh, it's 2008. I'm going to come in with these exceptionally low offers, and the sellers are going to take it because they're desperate. We're not there, but where we are, Morgan, is becoming more balanced, which is healthy. More options for buyers. Doesn't feel that way when you're a seller, but it's good. It's a good, healthy market.
I was just looking at, Canopy releases all these great statistics every month, just kind of giving people an update on the market and where the local market stands. And in there, it says, despite the growing inventory and additional choices for buyers, sellers received 96.3% of their original list price. That's down just ever so slightly from 96.6% in May of 2025. But what stood out to me is this isn't they're receiving 120% of their list price. So buyers are offering below list price, or they're offering the list price of the home. And then during due diligence, they're negotiating maybe a lower price because maybe the inspection came back with something they didn't know. That's what that tells me.
That's the reality, and you're exactly right, Morgan. When buyers are viewing homes, now they have the time to make the decision,
Mhm.
which we don't talk about that enough. But when there's very little inventory, 1 day's worth of standing inventory, there's no time to make a decision. There are no options. Now we have options. And while you're in the due diligence period, which you mentioned during inspections, one of the options might be, okay, so we paid and negotiated as a buyer a little more than we thought, but we didn't recognize when you look behind the walls, as an inspector does, if you will, we didn't recognize that there would be immediate expenses coming into this home.
Mhm.
So they're going to try and negotiate some type of concessions to get that price down a little bit.
Mhm.
And that's where you're seeing the 96% of closed prices. But what doesn't show up that we see on our MLS as realtors is that seller concession. And that's
Right.
deducted from that number.
Right. And the seller concession, I'm seeing a lot more of that on the multiple listing service, which is MLS. So I'm seeing a lot more sellers are agreeing, okay, I'll give you 5, 10, whatever, $1,000 just to make sure this thing closes.
That's right.
Which they weren't doing
Negotiations.
before.
And
Imagine that, negotiating the price of a home.
oh my
What a
goodness.
novel concept.
What an idea. But it's true. There was really no negotiation when we were in the crazy world of it
Mhm.
was like the wild, wild west.
Mhm.
And now we're back to reality. We're going to negotiate all the way, like you mentioned, until the day it closes.
Yeah. It's never, I'm going to steal what you said before the show. It's never a seller's market and a buyer's market at the same time.
Exactly
How
right.
would you describe the market currently?
Oh, that's a great question. So for a seller, it very much feels like a buyer's market. But
Mhm.
what we're moving toward is a balanced market. And a balanced market is when you have 6 months of inventory. We're at about a little more than 3 months
3 and a
right
half,
now.
something like
That's
that.
exactly
Okay.
right. So it is still considered, believe it or not, a seller's market.
Mhm.
But what buyers feel is, again, we mentioned it earlier, there's more choice, there's more time to
Mhm.
make that decision. So it's becoming more balanced.
So, to that point, something else in this report that Canopy released is we are at the highest level of inventory for the region since September of 2016. I thought, okay, where were we in September of 2016? So it looks like the supply is roughly 12,600
Mhm.
homes for sale. Uh, the pace of sales in 2016 was completely different than it is now. Much faster. I took a look at the rates, and the rates were between 3 and 4%. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense that it was still a very competitive market, still a seller's market because the rates were low. People were buying, even though the inventory matches what we're seeing now. The rates didn't match what we're seeing now. Rates are mid sixes right now.
That's exactly right. And that is the conversation being had constantly. But if you look through history, and it's hard to do when we have recently experienced unprecedented 3% rates and below,
Mm-hmm.
6.5 feels huge. But many, many people in the early
It's not double
2000s,
digits.
it's not, you're very well said, because our grandparents and parents maybe bought homes in that
Mm-hmm.
double digit range. But 6.5, you really feel that when you're looking at your monthly payment.
Closed sales are down 1% year over year. But under contract, meaning you place an offer on a home, the seller says, yep, I'm accepting that offer. That means you're under contract. Under contract is up nearly 8%. Those two don't really seem to match. Closed sales down 1%, but under contract up nearly 8%. Does that mean that there are more buyers backing out of transactions?
Very well said. So what happens is we count under contract. You're under contract. Oh my goodness, you are in love. And in an inspect, right?
Then you fall out of love.
Then you sort of go through a rough patch,
Yeah.
as we say. And you have inspections, and maybe it doesn't appraise. We never saw that previously in the crazy wild, wild west of real estate, but we're seeing that now. Homes are not appraising.
Mm-hmm.
And inspections may come back, and there's a negotiation, which we started this conversation with. And it may go the buyer's way or it may not. The seller may not be willing to provide concessions or do whatever the buyer thinks is necessary in order to close. Buyers have no issue walking away from their due diligence because due diligence money has become something that is somewhat normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's
What's
not the crazy.
what's normal? I mean,
I know
and
that's
and again, comparing to, and I think this is a great question for someone looking to buy a home. Okay, due diligence. You're buying time to kick the tires, so to speak.
right.
And you say, I'm going to pay what, $5,000 to kick the tires. During COVID, it might have been, what was the highest you saw during
$300,000
due diligence?
due diligence.
Yeah, you're not backing out of that deal.
You're not backing out. That means I want it. I don't care what's wrong with it.
Right.
But I think, and people will always ask this, I'm sure you're aware, buyers will say, so what is a typical due diligence? And please know that real estate is all gray area.
Right.
So there isn't
Such a
anything
scale.
typical. However, what it was intended to be was a house payment. So you pay the seller a house payment to take their home off the market for 30 days to do your due diligence. And then COVID hit and it became crazy money, skin in the game. But if you think about that and if you look at what your house payment would be for that home you want to purchase, then that's a realistic number for due diligence. Again, as we started this conversation, everything is negotiable, and that's one of the items that are very negotiable.
So I think that's great for people to know that number. And that means that, you back out of it, that's what you're going to lose. You're not getting that back, at least in North Carolina.
Right.
So I think that's great for people to know. But again, it reflects how due diligence has changed, going from the extreme of putting down $300,000, there's no way I'm backing out, to now you get under contract and you're like, well, the max I'm going to lose is $2,000. And if there are issues that you just can't get past, then you lost $2,000 and you move on. It's a tough pill to swallow regardless. Losing money is never fun.
It's never fun.
Time.
And you know what? It's tough for the seller too, because again, we were talking before the show started, then the seller has lost that time on market.
And then it's almost like it's stigmatized in a way. I hate to use that term because it's kind of like real estate term, but it is.
It
and
actually is.
someone sees that as, okay, they had a buyer drop out. What's wrong with it?
That's the first thing everyone thinks. And so it could be nothing. It could be they've literally changed their mind, found something else, but it could in all reality be something in inspections. If there is, the seller is required to disclose it. But 9 times out of 10, it's negotiating.
Well, and most of the time you see the disclosure at the bottom is, back on market due to no fault of the seller.
Right.
And that's a lot of times what you end up seeing. So dialing it back to affordability for obviously the buyer. As we mentioned, it's not typically a buyer's and seller's market at the same time. So sellers, you might want to pay attention to this as well. The median townhome sales price declined, and again, this is for our area, declined 2.4% to $350,000, while condo prices fell 4.8% to $295,000. Sellers might be sweating a little bit. Are we seeing, I guess on the seller side, they would call it a saturation in the market of townhomes. On the buyer's side, some real opportunity?
That's exactly right, Morgan. Well said. So builders are focusing more on density. They're not making any more land. So townhomes really is where we have the focus from builders. And one thing that an individual selling a home cannot do is give incentives that may be $10,000 off a new extra room. We're going to finish out the 3rd floor, right? A townhome, a builder can do that. A seller has to take it out of their pocket, out of their proceeds. So in the outer areas of Charlotte, you are definitely seeing more inventory. Builders building, and buyers are, especially buyers that want affordability, we talk about so much, but want to get in maybe for the first time, or like we mentioned prior, they're our industry workers. They need something less than $460,000, which is the median price. So they're going to townhomes.
Well, not everyone wants the upkeep of a house, a single family home with a yard and all of that, and a townhome and or condo might be the perfect fit for them. So I guess if a buyer is listening to this and thinking, okay, I could probably, based off of those numbers, maybe I can afford a townhome or a condo. Uh, but is that the smartest investment then if we're currently seeing that they're almost depreciating a little bit?
Right. That's a great question. And you know what I always say to my clients is, are you buying this as an investor or are you buying this as someone who's going to live in this
Yes.
property? And right. And that
It
is
is an investment. I get what you're saying with investor, though. Like
investor.
it's
Yes.
more landlord or
And so you really can't put a number on the time that you spend there when you're not renting. That's a financial a liability, if you will,
hmm
paying rent versus paying your mortgage. I always say, do you want to pay your mortgage or do you want to pay someone else's?
right.
Right. And that's where you are. And then we have no way to know, really, none of us have a crystal ball. When it comes time for that seller to sell, will the townhome or the condominium appreciate at a rate that you want it to? Because
hmm
back to what we said originally, it's never a buyer's market and a seller's market at the same time. So hopefully, when you're ready to move into something different, and it is truly a buyer's market because it is very cyclical, then you will have the upper hand, if you will, when you go to purchase. So back to your question, is it a good investment? All real estate is a better investment to own than to rent. So my
hmm
answer would be yes, but I don't think you count on appreciation on anything. You
hmm
really just can't count on it.
hmm Well, and just taking appreciation out of it, I always think, okay, you know, buying isn't always for everyone. You
Right.
don't know the financial situation. You don't know if someone's going to move out of state, and
Right.
maybe buying a house and paying closing costs and all that stuff isn't a good decision when you're going to pick up and move in a year or two.
Right.
So I'll preface it with that, but rent is 100% interest. And when you pay your mortgage, a certain percentage of that is going to your principal, your equity. You're basically saving money.
Right.
And so I always think that is, to your point, you can pay someone else's mortgage or you can pay your own. Obviously, in the beginning, when you're making your payments, it's mostly interest.
Right.
And eventually, interest and principal cross paths is at somewhere in the middle, but
Right.
it takes a while to get to that point. All right, someone's looking to buy their starter home.
Right.
How much do they need? It's a loaded question, I know. I'm going to
I'm
challenge
ready.
you with this one.
That's fine.
How much do they need? Top concern right now, according to an article that I found online by CNBC, would be mortgage rates. That's the top concern versus economy, inventory, and prices. So we've talked about prices and inventory, but the main concern is the our mortgage rates. That in mind, how much should someone try to plan to save for a home? How much should they plan for closing costs? What would be their all-in, obviously extracting from that their own personal financial details?
Right. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because all in weighs a lot of different factors,
Mhm.
right? Certainly down payment. And everyone thinks, oh my goodness, I have to have 20% down. That is no longer the case.
Right.
So my advice would be definitely investigate all types of loans for your first purchase. And then you touched on this also. The affordability really ties into your financial standing. So $200 a month is the number right now that Charlotteans are paying for streaming services. So
I
that
love that you brought up other expenses.
so that brings your buying ability down
Mhm.
$30,000, right? So you've got to think about that. Your car payment, your student debt, all of that adds into what do you need to purchase a home. First, you need to get your finances in line. And
Mhm.
there may be some things you need to pay off before you can buy a home. But to specifically answer your question, if you were purchasing a median priced home, which is $460,000 in Charlotte, you would need a household income of $100,000.
So you mentioned this, and this is not something we discussed ahead of time, so I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm ready.
Student loan debt.
Yes.
This is going to be a very new territory for borrowers
Yes.
because all of a sudden that COVID relief that they were getting, that's gone. The payments have started back up, and I think I saw it was like 1 in 5 federal student loan borrowers are currently in default.
Yep.
Considering that, do you think that that will severely impact housing?
I certainly think there will be an impact. I absolutely agree with you. But one thing we haven't mentioned that we're seeing a lot, once a student loan becomes the student's responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing the bank of mom and dad come into play more than we ever have before, because many, many people's parents have this huge appreciation that they're sitting on for
Mm-hmm.
years in their home. And what better way to invest your money than your children?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm seeing that more than I ever have before, Morgan. But I do think long term it will affect the ability for individuals to be able to purchase a home.
Okay, because when the loan officer is calculating things, they look at the debt to income ratio. That's what
Correct.
it's called. All your debt and what you're earning. And there's a percentage that they spit out, a cap, right?
Right.
Which is roughly
Oh,
35
35, it
to
depends.
40%.
35 to 40, it
45.
depends, but I think we could safely say that, yes.
Okay. So student loans, is that, and I probably should keep this for a loan officer, a question for a loan officer. I would think that that's factored into all that because that's a monthly payment.
So I do think so as well, and I am not a
Right.
loan officer at all, and so I need to stay in my lane. But I know that all recurring expenses
Mhm.
are absolutely factored
Mhm.
in. That's why I brought up the streaming services.
Right.
That's something we don't think about, but $200 a month adds up.
I think that this generation, um, we're so spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
We have the iPhones. If we, depending on the person, you want to get your nails done, you go get your nails done. There are all these things that we do, pay for streaming services. Um, you know, my mom always goes back to when she was starting her barber shop. She said, I lived on generic tuna while I was getting started.
Right.
I don't know if our generation could do that.
I just
And
don't think we could.
So if you need to cut back and you want to and you really want the house, there are ways to do it, but there are also sacrifices to be made. And I just don't know, looking at our generation, if we know how to do that. And you bringing up the streaming services is just a prime example of that.
I absolutely agree with you. It's been easy
Yeah.
for so many years that we're going to need to sit back and really tighten our purse strings, if you will.
Mhm.
If your goal is to buy a home, and that is the greatest way to create generational wealth, so
Mhm.
why would you not try?
Hmm.
Why would you not put a little work into it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I agree. All right, Joan, is there anything that I missed? I know we had a whole bunch of talking points and we went off script a little bit today, which
Which
I
we always
totally
do.
love.
Which we always do. You know what? I think that one thing that we didn't say and probably needs to be said is that everyone says, are things affordable or not affordable? And I think the answer really lies somewhere in the middle. It's sort of nuanced. So it's affordable if you take care of, like you mentioned, some of your debt. It's affordable if you look outside what you were thinking. Maybe you're thinking a single family detached home, and a townhome may be the best option, or condominium, for where you are today. I think it's fair for us to say Charlotte faces affordability challenges, no question about it.
Mhm.
But I think the two of us are optimistic. Interest rates are higher, but they're not 15%. They're
Mhm.
actually historically low, which it doesn't feel that way. And it's all about really understanding your finances, knowing your options, knowing there are different types of homes out there, and working with a knowledgeable realtor and a knowledgeable lender who can help navigate all the resources available.
Mhm.
We have down payment resource right in our MLS, and 80% of our listings have some type of down payment resource available to them.
Mhm.
That's huge.
Mhm.
That's huge.
It just underscores the importance of finding someone you trust to help walk you through that transaction. This isn't a sales pitch, but obviously you're making the biggest decision financially,
Right.
likely, of your life. Why would you walk through that alone?
Exactly right. You need advice. And one thing I'd love to end on is, at the end of the day, a home is really so much more than four walls and a roof. It's where you bring your friends in, it's where relationships grow, memories are made, and futures are built. And our job as realtors is to make sure as many dreams as possible come true.
Mm-hmm. And buying your first home doesn't necessarily mean buying your forever home, but you'll still have a lot of memories regardless.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Joan, thank you so much for coming in today. That's number 2, so we're closer to the 6 Timers Club, I think is what it's called. So
we've got to get to work.
we do. We'll have to make this a monthly occurrence. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Morgan. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. And to everyone else out there, thank you so much for watching this episode of Turnkey on Queen City News Plus. We'll see you back here next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.